Security! Remove this man immediately. He clearly doesn't belong in a respectable establishment like this. Bank manager Diane Fletcher's manicured finger pointed directly at the exit. Her voice carried across Premier First National's marble lobby like a gavel. Every head turned toward the man in the navy-tailored suit. Isaiah Washington sat motionless in the leather chair. His briefcase rested on his lap, platinum clasps catching afternoon light through floor-to-ceiling windows. At 45, he carried himself with quiet confidence born from hard-learned patience. Fletcher's gesture was theatrical, sweeping, designed to humiliate. Behind the teller counter, Zara Rodriguez felt her stomach drop. Her phone was already recording. The digital clock showed 2:47 p.m., Tuesday afternoon in the financial district. Isaiah's dark eyes met Fletcher's without blinking. No anger, no shock, just calculation. Have you ever watched someone's prejudice blind them to a reality that could destroy their career in minutes? The silence stretched like pulled wire. Isaiah remained seated, his posture unchanged. One hand rested on his briefcase handle, the other held his phone, which buzzed softly. "Tokyo calling," flashed across the screen before he declined the call. Fletcher's jaw tightened. "Excuse me? Did you hear what I said?" "I heard you clearly, Ms. Fletcher." Isaiah's voice was steady, professional. "I'd like to speak with someone about opening a corporate account." A snort escaped Fletcher's lips. She crossed her arms, her Hermes blazer pulling tight across her shoulders. "Corporate account?" Her eyes swept from his shoes to his face. "Let me guess. You're here about some kind of community program?" The words landed like stones in still water. Ripples of discomfort spread through the lobby. An elderly woman near the ATM clutched her purse tighter. A businessman in a pinstripe suit shook his head, muttering something under his breath. Zara's live stream had attracted 57 viewers. Comments were already appearing. Is this really happening? Someone needs to help this man. This is 2025, not 1955. The market countdown clock ticked to 87 minutes remaining. Isaiah checked his watch, a platinum Patek Philippe that cost more than most people's cars. Fletcher didn't notice. "Ma'am, I understand there may be some confusion," Isaiah said. "If you could simply verify my account status—" "There's no confusion." Fletcher's voice rose an octave. She tapped her foot against the marble floor, the sound echoing like a metronome. "I don't know what game you're playing, but we don't have time for whatever this is." Isaiah's phone buzzed again. This time, Fletcher caught a glimpse of the caller ID. "Board Chairman, Wellington." Isaiah declined that call too. A second witness emerged. Malik Thompson, a local entrepreneur banking at Premier First National for 3 years, had started recording on Instagram. His story already had 38 views. "Y'all see this discrimination?" he typed in the caption. Fletcher's assistant manager, Jennifer Walsh, approached from the back office. Her expression shifted from curiosity to alarm as she absorbed the scene, but instead of questioning Fletcher's behavior, she fell in line. "Is there a problem here, Diane?" Walsh asked, her tone suggesting she already knew the answer. "This individual is claiming he wants to open a corporate account," Fletcher said, emphasizing claiming like it was profanity. "I've explained that he might be more comfortable elsewhere." Isaiah opened his wallet to retrieve identification. For just a moment, the edge of a black card was visible. American Express Centurion. The annual fee alone was $6,500. Fletcher's eyes were focused elsewhere. "I have proper identification and documentation," Isaiah said calmly, "including my tax returns and corporate filings." "Anyone can forge documents," Fletcher replied. Her prejudice was a wall she'd spent years building. Logic wasn't about to tear it down now. The lobby began to fill with afternoon customers. A few recognized the tension and moved toward other tellers. Others, drawn by human nature's fascination with conflict, lingered nearby. Phones emerged like flowers after rain. Zara's live stream jumped to 112 viewers. Someone had shared it on Twitter with the hashtag #PremierBankBias. The digital wildfire was already spreading. Isaiah's chauffeur, Carlos, sent a text. "Jet ready for 6 p.m. departure to Geneva. All arrangements confirmed." Isaiah read it without reaction, then slipped the phone back into his jacket. "Ms. Fletcher," Isaiah said, his voice carrying the weight of practiced patience, "I'd suggest you verify my account status before making decisions you can't undo." Fletcher's laugh was sharp, bitter. "I don't need to verify anything. You're wasting our time." She turned toward the security desk where Chief Robert Kane was finishing paperwork. Kane had 22 years with Premier First National. He'd seen his share of difficult customers, but he'd also seen his share of difficult managers. "Robert," Fletcher called out, "I need your assistance." Kane looked up, assessed the situation, and walked over slowly. His security uniform was pressed, his badge polished. At 58, he'd learned to read situations before acting. "What's the situation, Ms. Fletcher?" "Remove this individual immediately," she said, pointing at Isaiah like he was contaminated. "He's refusing to leave after I've explained he's in the wrong place." Kane's eyes moved from Fletcher to Isaiah, taking in the tailored suit, the confident posture, the expensive briefcase. Something felt off. His instincts, honed by decades of security work, were pinging. "Sir," Kane said carefully, "is there something I can help you with?" Isaiah smiled slightly. It was the first emotion he'd shown since arriving. "Actually, Mr. Kane, there might be, but I think Ms. Fletcher and I need to finish our conversation first." The market clock showed 3:15 p.m., 72 minutes until close. Fletcher's face flushed red. "There's nothing to finish. Security, I'm ordering you to escort this man out of the building. Now." The command hung in the air like smoke. Customers stopped moving. Conversations died. Even the soft jazz playing from hidden speakers seemed to pause. Isaiah adjusted his tie, a simple gesture that somehow contained infinite patience. "Ms. Fletcher," he said quietly, "do you know who sits on your board of directors?" Fletcher's laugh came out strangled. "Board of directors? What kind of question is that?" The market clock ticked to 3:16 p.m., 71 minutes remaining. Kane studied Isaiah's face, searching for tells. In 2 decades of security work, he'd developed a sixth sense about people. The man before him radiated calm authority, not the desperate energy of a con artist or the nervous fidgeting of someone out of their depth. This was something altogether different. "Ma'am," Kane said slowly, "maybe we should—" "Maybe nothing," Fletcher snapped. "I gave you a direct order. Remove him." Zara's live stream had exploded to 500 viewers. Comments flooded the screen faster than she could read them. "Call the news! Someone get a lawyer! This is disgusting!" The notification sound became a constant chime. Her manager was going to be furious, but she couldn't stop recording now. Malik Thompson had switched from Instagram stories to Facebook Live. His stream caught 37 new viewers in the first minute. Local activist account @JusticeWatchATL had already reposted his video with a fire emoji and 3 hashtags. #BankingWhileBlack, #Premier, shame, #accountability_now. The lobby was filled with afternoon customers. A group of college students stopped at the entrance, phones already out, sensing drama. A businessman in his 70s shook his head disgustedly and walked toward the exit, muttering about the state of things these days. "This is embarrassing," someone whispered near the ATM. "Should we call someone?" another voice asked. "Call who? The police?" came a reply. "For what, banking while black?" Fletcher's face burned crimson. The attention was the last thing she wanted, but backing down felt impossible now. She'd drawn her line on the marble floor, and crossing back meant admitting she was wrong. 15 years of management had taught her that showing weakness was career suicide. Kane approached Isaiah cautiously. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to... His radio crackled. Security to the main office. Security to the main office immediately. Kane paused, hand hovering over the radio. Office emergencies took priority over lobby disputes. But Fletcher's eyes were boring holes in his back, and he could feel the weight of corporate hierarchy pressing down. Ignore it, she hissed. Deal with this first. Isaiah's phone buzzed again. This time he glanced at the screen. Managing Director, London. Another decline. But not before Kane caught the caller ID. His security training had taught him to notice details. Managing Director. London. International calls. The pieces weren't adding up to Fletcher's narrative. Ms. Fletcher, Kane said carefully. Maybe we should verify this gentleman's account status first. It would only take... I don't care about his account status. Fletcher's voice cracked like a whip. Several customers turned to stare. Her composure was fracturing under the pressure. I care about him disrupting our business with whatever elaborate scam he's running. Isaiah finally stood. The movement was fluid, controlled. At 6'2", he commanded the space around him without effort. His briefcase remained in his left hand, a prop in whatever performance was unfolding. Scam? He asked quietly. What exactly do you think I'm trying to accomplish here, Ms. Fletcher? I think you're trying to make some kind of scene. Get attention. Maybe set us up for a lawsuit or social media campaign. Fletcher's theory sounded ridiculous even to her own ears, but she was committed now. Retreat wasn't an option. Walsh nodded eagerly from beside her. It's a setup. Has to be. Look at all the cameras. The irony was perfect. Fletcher was creating the exact scene she accused Isaiah of orchestrating. The snake was eating its own tail. Zara's viewer count hit 800 and climbing. Her hands trembled as she held the phone steady. She'd never seen anything like this in 3 years of working at the bank. Fletcher had always been tough but professional. This felt different, personal, like watching someone's career implode in real time. Kane's radio crackled again. Security, where are you? We have a situation in the executive conference room. I'm handling a situation right here, Kane replied, but his conviction was wavering. Executive conference room situations usually involve important people, the kind who could end careers. Isaiah checked his watch again, 3:22 p.m. The gesture was casual, but something in his expression shifted. Time was becoming a factor, though no one understood why yet. Mr. Kane, Isaiah said, how long have you worked here? 22 years, Kane replied automatically. 22 years. You've seen a lot of changes, I imagine. Management turnover, policy updates, new ownership structures, mergers and acquisitions. Kane's brow furrowed. Why was this man asking about ownership structures, about mergers and acquisitions? Those weren't typical customer concerns. Fletcher stepped between them, her heels clicking sharply on the marble. Stop trying to manipulate my security chief with your corporate buzzwords. Robert, I want this man out of the building. Use whatever force is necessary. The words, whatever force is necessary, rippled through the crowd like electricity. Phones rose higher. Someone gasped audibly. The phrase carried legal implications that made everyone uncomfortable. Malik's Facebook Live now had 150 viewers. Among them was a local news producer who'd received the link from an intern. This was either a slow news day goldmine or a lawsuit waiting to happen. A new arrival entered the lobby. Dr. Sarah Monroe, a longtime customer and local physician. She took one look at the scene and immediately understood the dynamics at play. Her face hardened with recognition. Kane looked at Isaiah, then at Fletcher, then at the growing crowd of witnesses. His training said, follow management's orders. His instincts said something was very, very wrong. The man's calm demeanor, the international phone calls, the expensive watch, none of it fit the profile Fletcher was painting. Sir, he said to Isaiah, voice heavy with reluctance, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me. Isaiah nodded slowly. I understand you're doing your job, Mr. Kane. But before you escort me anywhere, I think Ms. Fletcher should answer my question. What question? Fletcher demanded, her voice rising another octave. About the board of directors. Specifically, do you know who holds the controlling interest in Premier First National Bank? Fletcher's mouth opened, then closed. In 15 years of banking, she'd never bothered learning the ownership structure. It seemed irrelevant to day-to-day operations. Banks had owners, executives had bosses, and she followed orders from above. That's confidential information, she stammered. Not confidential, Isaiah corrected gently. Public record. SEC filings are available to anyone with internet access. Kane was fully alert now. SEC filings weren't typically part of a scammer's vocabulary. Neither was casual mention of controlling interests or board compositions. Isaiah's phone rang again. This time he answered on the second ring. Isaiah Washington speaking. The voice on the other end was crisp, professional, with a slight British accent, loud enough for others to hear fragments. Board meeting at 4. Quarterly review completed. Geneva conference call confirmed. Isaiah listened for 30 seconds, nodding occasionally. Then he spoke. I'm currently conducting a site visit at the downtown Atlanta branch. Yes, the unscheduled performance evaluation. The results are quite illuminating. I'll call you back within the hour. He ended the call and slipped the phone into his jacket pocket. Performance evaluation, unscheduled, illuminating results. Kane's eyes widened. Fletcher's face went pale as bone china. The market clock showed 3:28 p.m. The afternoon was slipping away, and with it, any chance of containing what was about to unfold. Now, Isaiah said, opening his briefcase with deliberate care, shall we discuss who exactly you've been trying to remove from this building? The briefcase opened with a soft click that seemed to echo through the suddenly silent lobby. Isaiah's movements were deliberate, almost ceremonial. He reached inside and withdrew a single document with official letterhead visible even from a distance. Wellington Capital Management, he said quietly, holding the paper so the logo was clearly visible. Controlling interest notification. Fletcher's eyes darted to the document, then back to Isaiah's face. Something cold was crawling up her spine like ice water in her veins. Wellington Capital owns 78% of Premier First National Bank, Isaiah continued, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions. I am Isaiah Washington, Senior Managing Partner. The words hit the lobby like a physical force. Complete silence descended like a heavy curtain. Even the soft jazz from the hidden speakers seemed to pause in shock. Fletcher's face drained of color so quickly that Dr. Monroe, still standing near the entrance, instinctively stepped forward in case the woman fainted. Fletcher's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air on dry land. Kane's hand fell away from his radio as if it had suddenly become molten metal. 22 years of security work, and he'd never seen anything like this unfold. Zara's live stream exploded. The viewer count jumped from 800 to over 2,000 in 30 seconds. 30 kibir. Comments flooded the screen so fast they became a blur of disbelief. No way. Plot twist. She's done. Karma is real. This can't be happening. Malik's Facebook Live was being shared across multiple platforms. The notification sounds from his phone became a constant symphony of alerts, likes, and shares spreading across social media like wildfire. That's impossible, Fletcher whispered, but her voice carried no conviction. The expensive suit, the international phone calls, the calm confidence, the platinum accessories, it was all clicking into place like pieces of a puzzle she'd been too blind to see. Isaiah reached into his briefcase again and withdrew a second document, this one bearing the seal of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Our fund manages $3.2 billion in assets, with $847 million directly invested in this bank's operations. The numbers hit like sledgehammers. 3.2 billion. 847 million. These weren't figures you could fake or bluff about. These were numbers that appeared in financial newspapers and quarterly reports. Walsh took an involuntary step backward, nearly stumbling over her own feet. Her face had gone pale as her manager's. She'd spent the last hour supporting Fletcher's position, and now she was realizing she'd just witnessed career suicide in real time. As majority stakeholder, Isaiah continued, his voice gaining strength with each word, I have executive review power over all personnel decisions, operational procedures, and customer service protocols. Kane felt his legs go weak. He'd been seconds away from putting his hands on the man who essentially owned the bank. The thought made his stomach clench with nausea. Dr. Monroe pulled out her phone and started recording from a different angle. As a longtime customer, she'd had her own encounters with Fletcher's attitude over the years. This was justice playing out in real time, and she wanted to document every second. Mr. Washington, Fletcher stammered, her voice barely above a whisper, there must be some misunderstanding. I was just trying to— You were just trying to do what, Ms. Fletcher? Isaiah's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath now, sharp and unforgiving. Protecting your establishment from a man in a $2,000 suit carrying proper identification? He reached into his wallet with deliberate slowness and laid his identification on the nearby counter. Georgia driver's license with his Buckhead address. American Express Centurion card with its distinctive weight and design. Wellington Capital Management corporate card. Each item was placed with precision, like evidence being presented in a courtroom. The Centurion card caught the afternoon light streaming through the windows. Zara zoomed in with her phone camera, and the chat exploded with recognition. Only billionaires and ultra-high net worth individuals carried those cards. I think, Isaiah said, still in that maddeningly calm voice that somehow carried more menace than any shout, we need to have a conversation about your customer service training. Fletcher's hands were shaking now, trembling like leaves in a storm. 15 years of banking experience, and she'd never encountered a situation like this. She'd discriminated against customers before, subtle actions, quiet prejudices, nothing this blatant, but never against someone with this kind of power. Sir, I apologize, she began desperately, but Isaiah held up a hand with the casual authority of someone accustomed to stopping conversations with a gesture. Ms. Fletcher, your apology is premature. You don't yet understand the full scope of what's happened here today. He reached for his phone and dialed a number from memory. The call connected immediately, as calls to billionaires often do. Board Chairman Wellington's office, please. This is Isaiah Washington. The lobby held its collective breath. Board Chairman Wellington was a name that appeared in financial newspapers, someone who moved markets with single decisions and whose opinions shaped policy at the highest levels. After a brief hold, Isaiah spoke again. Charles, I'm at the Atlanta downtown branch conducting that unscheduled evaluation we discussed last week. The results are quite illuminating. Pause. The silence was deafening. Yes, I'm putting you on speakerphone. I think the staff here needs to hear this conversation. Isaiah placed the phone on the marble counter. A crisp British accent filled the lobby, each word carrying the weight of old money and older power. Isaiah, what's the situation on the ground? I've just spent the last hour being systematically discriminated against by branch manager Diane Fletcher, who attempted to have security forcibly remove me from the premises. She suggested I'd be more comfortable at a check-cashing establishment down the street. Silence from the phone. A silence so complete it seemed to have physical weight. Then, I beg your pardon? Did you say you were discriminated against? Fletcher's career flashed before her eyes like a drowning person's life. 15 years of climbing the corporate ladder, and she was about to fall off in spectacular public fashion. Furthermore, Isaiah continued, his voice carrying clearly through the hushed lobby. When I attempted to provide proper identification and explain my purpose here, Ms. Fletcher escalated the situation, instructing security to use whatever force necessary to remove me from the building. Whatever force is necessary. Wellington's voice carried the chill of an Arctic wind. Each word was articulated with precision. Against a senior partner of Wellington Capital Management? Kane wanted to disappear into the floor, to melt into the marble and become part of the architecture. He'd been ordered to use force against a man worth billions of dollars. The live stream viewers were now pushing 3,000 and climbing by the minute. Someone had posted the link on Reddit, and the story was spreading like wildfire across social media platforms. Hashtag Premier Bank Scandal was trending on Twitter alongside hashtag Banking While Black. Ms. Fletcher, Wellington's voice continued through the phone, each syllable cutting like a scalpel. Are you present and able to respond? Fletcher's voice came out as a croak. Yes, sir, I'm here. Are these allegations accurate? Did you attempt to have Mr. Washington removed from your branch? Fletcher looked around the lobby desperately. 50 witnesses with phones raised, multiple live streams broadcasting to thousands, security cameras recording everything from multiple angles. Denial was not just impossible, it was career suicide. There may have been a serious miscommunication, she whispered, her voice barely audible. A miscommunication? Wellington's voice could have frozen lava. Ms. Fletcher, do you understand the gravity of what you've done? Do you comprehend that Mr. Washington was conducting your annual performance evaluation? The final revelation hit like a meteor striking Earth. Performance evaluation. Fletcher's annual review wasn't scheduled for another month, but she'd heard stories about senior partners conducting surprise assessments, unannounced visits to test management under pressure. Isaiah had been testing her from the moment he walked through the door, and she'd failed so catastrophically that failure seemed an inadequate word. My God, Dr. Monroe whispered loud enough for the phones to pick up her voice. Zara's hands were shaking so hard she could barely hold her phone steady. The comments section was a waterfall of shock, disbelief, and righteous anger flowing faster than she could read. The college students near the entrance were recording everything, their phones capturing multiple angles of what would undoubtedly become a viral sensation. Mr. Washington, Wellington continued, his voice carrying the weight of institutional authority, what are your preliminary recommendations regarding this situation? Isaiah looked directly at Fletcher. Her career, her reputation, her future, everything hung in the balance, dangling from a thread she'd cut herself with her own prejudice. We'll discuss the full details privately, Charles, but I think immediate and comprehensive remedial action is required. This incident has been live-streamed to several thousand viewers and is already spreading across social media platforms. Of course it has, Wellington sighed audibly through the phone. The bank's response will need to be swift, decisive, and comprehensive. Ms. Fletcher, you are hereby suspended from your position pending a full investigation, effective immediately. Security will escort you to collect your personal belongings. Fletcher's legs gave out completely. She grabbed the counter for support, her face a mask of shock, regret, and dawning realization of what her prejudice had cost her. Kane stood frozen, unsure whether to help his now former manager or distance himself from the unfolding disaster that was about to consume everything in its path. There's one more detail, Isaiah said, his voice carrying just a hint of satisfaction that justice was finally being served. This entire incident has been documented by multiple witnesses and broadcast live to several thousand viewers. The bank's reputation is already being discussed across social media platforms. Wellington's response was immediate and decisive. Mr. Washington, please handle the immediate situation as you see fit. I'll convene an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning to address the broader implications. Understood, Charles. Isaiah ended the call and looked around the lobby. The crowd was larger now, Word had spread through the financial district, and people were arriving just to witness the aftermath of what was already being called the discrimination heard round the world. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his voice carrying easily through the marble space, "I apologize for the disruption to your banking experience today. Premier First National is committed to serving all customers with dignity, respect, and equality. What you witnessed here does not reflect our institutional values or operational standards." The crowd murmured approval. Someone started clapping, and others joined in. The sound was surreal, spontaneous applause in a bank lobby for a discrimination case that had just destroyed a career. Fletcher was led away by Kane, her 15-year career reduced to a cardboard box of personal items and a reputation that would follow her for the rest of her professional life. But Isaiah wasn't finished. There was still one more revelation to come, one final piece of the puzzle that would complete this real-life story of justice served. "Ms. Rodriguez," he called to Zara, who was still live-streaming with trembling hands, "could you please continue recording? I think your viewers would be very interested in what happens next." Zara nodded, unable to speak. Her stream now had over 4,000 viewers, and the number was climbing exponentially as the story spread across the internet. Isaiah smiled for the first time since arriving at the bank. It was the expression of someone who'd planned every move 3 steps ahead, someone who understood that sometimes justice required perfect patience. The real show was just beginning. Isaiah walked to the center of the lobby, his presence commanding attention from every corner of the marble space. The crowd had grown to nearly 100 people, drawn by social media alerts and word spreading through the financial district. Phones were raised like torches, capturing every moment of what had become Atlanta's most talked-about corporate incident of the year. "Before we discuss next steps," Isaiah announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to addressing boardrooms and shareholders, "I think it's important that everyone understands the full scope of what transpired here today." He opened his briefcase again and withdrew a tablet, swiping to a presentation that appeared to have been prepared in advance. The first slide showed Premier First National's organizational chart. "This branch generates $12.3 million in annual revenue," he began, his voice cutting through the lobby's hushed attention. "Today's incident cost us 47 customers who walked out during the confrontation. Based on average customer lifetime value, that represents approximately $2.8 million in lost business." The numbers were precise, devastating. Fletcher, still being escorted by Kane, stopped walking and turned to listen. Her face had gone from pale to ashen. Isaiah swiped to the next slide. "Discrimination lawsuits in the banking sector average $2.4 million in settlements, excluding legal fees and regulatory fines. Stock price typically drops 8 to 12% following public discrimination incidents." Dr. Monroe was recording everything, her medical training making her appreciate the clinical precision of Isaiah's presentation. This wasn't emotional retaliation, it was surgical dismantling of institutional failure. "Ms. Fletcher," Isaiah called out, causing the suspended manager to freeze mid-step. According to Premier First National's Employee Handbook, Section 4.7, what is the mandatory consequence for bias-based customer mistreatment? Fletcher's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. She'd never actually read Section 4.7. "Immediate termination," Isaiah supplied. "No warnings, no probationary periods, immediate termination." Zara's live stream had reached 6,000 viewers. The comments section was a waterfall of responses. "She's done. Read the receipts. Corporate justice. This is everything." Isaiah swiped to another slide showing social media metrics in real time. As of this moment, footage of today's incident has been viewed over 50,000 times across multiple platforms. Hatch Premier Bank Scandal is trending number 3 nationally on Twitter. The crowd murmured in amazement. 50,000 views in less than 2 hours. The reputational damage to Premier First National is already substantial and growing exponentially, Isaiah continued. Our public relations team is monitoring sentiment analysis, which currently shows negative reactions at 87%. Walsh, who had been trying to disappear into the background, found herself under Isaiah's gaze. Ms. Walsh, as assistant manager, you witnessed the entire interaction. At what point did you attempt to de-escalate the situation or question Ms. Fletcher's approach? Walsh's voice came out as a whisper. I trusted Ms. Fletcher's judgment. You trusted her judgment when she suggested I visit a check-cashing establishment? When she ordered security to use force against a customer? When she refused to verify account status despite multiple requests? Each question hit like a hammer blow. Walsh realized she wasn't just a witness to Fletcher's career destruction, she was complicit in it. Isaiah's phone buzzed with an incoming call. He glanced at the screen. SEC compliance officer. Excuse me, he said to the crowd, then answered. Isaiah Washington. The conversation was brief, but audible enough for nearby phones to capture fragments. Federal investigation. Compliance review. Immediate audit. The Securities and Exchange Commission was already involved. This wasn't just a corporate incident anymore, it was a federal matter. Isaiah ended the call and addressed the crowd again. That was the SEC. They're opening a compliance investigation into Premier First National's customer service practices and discrimination policies. Fletcher made a sound like a wounded animal. A federal investigation meant her career in banking was over, permanently. Now, Isaiah said, closing his tablet and fixing his attention on the remaining bank staff, we need to discuss immediate corrective actions. He gestured to Kane, who approached reluctantly. Mr. Kane, in your 22 years here, have you received adequate training on recognizing and preventing discriminatory behavior? Kane considered the question carefully. We have annual diversity training, sir, but it's mostly videos and multiple-choice tests. Videos and tests, Isaiah repeated. When was the last time you participated in scenario-based training? Role-playing exercises? Real-world simulations? Never, sir. Isaiah nodded grimly. Ms. Rodriguez, how many hours of customer service training did you receive when you started here? Zara, still live streaming, answered nervously. 4 hours, sir, mostly about transaction procedures. 4 hours. And how much of that focused on treating all customers with equal dignity and respect? Maybe 15 minutes? The inadequacy was staggering. 4 hours of training, 15 minutes on equality. Isaiah opened his briefcase one final time and withdrew a thick document. This is Premier First National's new Customer Dignity Protocol, effective immediately. Every customer interaction will be recorded and reviewed. AI monitoring will detect discriminatory language patterns in real time. He handed copies to Kane and Walsh. Monthly unconscious bias workshops are now mandatory for all staff. No exceptions. Failure to attend results in immediate termination. The crowd was captivated. This wasn't just punishment, it was systematic reform happening in real time. Furthermore, Isaiah continued, we're implementing a customer advocate program. Any customer who feels they've been treated unfairly can immediately request review by a corporate representative. Dr. Monroe stepped forward. Mr. Washington, as a longtime customer, I want to say this gives me hope. I've witnessed subtle discrimination here before, but never anything this blatant. Her words carried weight. She was a respected physician, a valuable customer, and her public support mattered. Isaiah's phone buzzed with a text from his assistant. CNN wants comment. MSNBC requesting interview. WSJ preparing story. The national media had picked up the story. This was no longer a local incident. Ladies and gentlemen, Isaiah announced, I want to be clear about something important. What happened here today was not about revenge or humiliation. It was about accountability and change. He looked directly at Fletcher, who was still being held by Kane. Ms. Fletcher, you have 3 options. First, you can resign immediately, and issue a public apology acknowledging your behavior. Second, you can participate in a comprehensive rehabilitation program, including sensitivity training, community service, and public education about discrimination. Third, you can fight this termination and face a federal investigation, civil lawsuits, and permanent blacklisting from the banking industry. The choice was clear, but Fletcher's pride was still fighting her pragmatism. "I need time to consider," she said weakly. "You have until 4 p.m., Isaiah replied, checking his watch. "That's 12 minutes. The countdown was brutal, but necessary. Justice delayed was justice denied. Isaiah addressed the live stream cameras directly. "To everyone watching this unfold, I want you to understand that discrimination thrives in silence. When good people say nothing, bad behavior continues. Today, brave witnesses like Ms. Rodriguez and Mr. Thompson ensured that silence was broken." Zara felt tears forming in her eyes. She'd never considered herself brave, but Isaiah was right. Her decision to record had changed everything. The banking industry, like all industries, must confront its biases honestly and completely, Isaiah continued. Today was uncomfortable but necessary. Real change requires real accountability. The crowd began to applaud again, but Isaiah held up a hand. The applause should be reserved for the hard work ahead, for the training sessions, the policy changes, the difficult conversations about race and respect that this industry has avoided for too long. His phone rang again. Board Chairman Wellington. "Charles, I'm still here," Isaiah answered. "Isaiah, I'm watching the live stream, 6,000 viewers and climbing. How do you want to proceed?" "We proceed with complete transparency, full cooperation with the SEC investigation, immediate implementation of the new protocols, and a corporate commitment to becoming the gold standard for equality in banking." "Agreed. The board supports your decisions completely." Isaiah ended the call and looked around the lobby one final time. Fletcher's 12 minutes were almost up, and with them, any chance of salvaging her career through cooperation rather than conflict. The real test wasn't in punishment, but in the systematic changes that would prevent future incidents. The touching stories and real-life stories of discrimination could finally become black stories of justice and reform. "Ms. Fletcher," Isaiah said quietly, "your time is up. What's your decision?" Fletcher's shoulders sagged in defeat. The weight of 6,000 live stream viewers, federal investigation threats, and her obliterated reputation finally broke through her pride. "I resign," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the crowd's murmur. "Effective immediately." Isaiah nodded once, neither triumphant nor sympathetic. "Ms. Rodriguez, are you still recording?" Zara held up her phone. "Yes, sir. 7,000 viewers now." "Ms. Fletcher, would you like to make a public statement?" Fletcher looked around the lobby at the faces watching her downfall. Some showed disgust, others pity, a few displayed satisfaction. But most showed something more complex, the recognition that systemic change required individual accountability. Fletcher cleared her throat, then spoke more clearly. "I want to apologize to Mr. Washington, to Premier First National's customers, and to everyone who witnessed my behavior today. My actions were wrong, discriminatory, and inexcusable." Her voice gained strength as she continued. "I will enroll in sensitivity training and bias education programs. I will do community service focused on racial equality, and I will spend the rest of my career working to undo the damage I've caused." It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. The crowd remained silent, processing the moment. Isaiah turned to Kane. "Mr. Kane, you're being reassigned to our corporate security training division. Your experience today will help develop scenarios for preventing future incidents." Kane's relief was visible. Reassignment instead of termination meant his pension was safe, his career salvageable. "Ms. Walsh," Isaiah continued, "you'll attend mandatory bias training and remain under probationary review for 6 months. Your performance will be closely monitored. Walsh nodded eagerly. She'd learned more about discrimination in 2 hours than in 15 years of corporate training. Isaiah addressed the crowd again. Premier First National is implementing immediate changes. Every branch will receive new protocols within 72 hours. He gestured to his tablet, displaying a comprehensive reform package. The Customer Dignity Initiative includes real-time monitoring software that detects discriminatory language. Staff will receive monthly unconscious bias training from external experts, not corporate videos. Dr. Monroe raised her hand. What about accountability measures? How do we ensure this isn't just empty promises? Excellent question, Isaiah replied. We're creating a customer advocate board with community representatives. They'll review all discrimination complaints and have authority to recommend personnel actions. The reform wasn't cosmetic, it was structural. Real oversight by real people with real power. Additionally, Isaiah continued, we're partnering with local civil rights organizations to conduct quarterly audits of our customer service practices. Full transparency, public reports. Malik, still broadcasting on Facebook Live, asked, what happens to employees who witness discrimination but don't report it? They'll face the same consequences as perpetrators, Isaiah said firmly. Silence enables discrimination. Bystander intervention training is now mandatory. The message was clear. Everyone was responsible for maintaining dignity and respect. Isaiah's assistant arrived with a small team of corporate representatives. They immediately began implementing the new protocols, installing monitoring software and distributing training materials. The technology component is crucial, Isaiah explained to the cameras. AI can detect bias patterns humans might miss, not to punish but to educate and prevent. Zara's live stream reached 8,000 viewers. Comments showed overwhelming support for the systematic approach. This is how change happens. Real solutions. Accountability plus action. Within 30 minutes, other Premier First National branches began reporting policy updates. The central office had pushed the Customer Dignity Protocol system-wide. Speed matters, Isaiah told the crowd. Delayed justice allows more victims. These changes are effective immediately at all 237 Premier First National locations. The scope was staggering. One incident triggering nationwide reform. Dr. Monroe approached Isaiah directly. As a longtime customer, I want to thank you. But I also want to ask, what took so long? Why did it require this public confrontation? Isaiah's response was measured. Institutional change requires institutional pressure. Private complaints disappear into bureaucracy. Public accountability creates urgency. It was a lesson in corporate psychology. Shame motivated faster than morality. Fletcher finished collecting her belongings. As she walked toward the exit, she stopped near Isaiah. Mr. Washington, I know this doesn't fix anything, but I genuinely want to do better. The training, the community service, I'll take it seriously. Isaiah studied her face, looking for sincerity. Ms. Fletcher, discrimination isn't a character flaw. It's a learned behavior. It can be unlearned, but only through sustained effort and honest self-reflection. She nodded and left quietly, her career at Premier First National ending not with defiance, but with commitment to growth. The lobby began to empty as normal banking operations resumed, but the changes were permanent, embedded in software and policy. Zara ended her live stream with a simple message. Thank you for watching justice happen in real time. Let's make sure this conversation continues. 8,200 viewers had witnessed systemic discrimination being confronted and corrected. The story would spread far beyond Atlanta, inspiring similar accountability elsewhere. Isaiah packed his briefcase methodically. The performance evaluation was complete, but the real work was just beginning. Reform required sustained attention, not just dramatic moments. As he prepared to leave, Dozens of customers approached to thank him. Their gratitude wasn't for punishment delivered, but for dignity restored. The afternoon sun streamed through the lobby windows, illuminating a space that would never be quite the same. Premier First National had become something new, an institution committed to equality not just in policy, but in practice. Change had come to Atlanta's financial district, one conversation at a time. 6 months later, Premier First National's downtown Atlanta branch had transformed into something unprecedented in corporate America. The Customer Dignity Protocol had prevented 47 potential discrimination incidents through real-time intervention. Staff satisfaction scores increased by 230% as employees embraced their roles as equality advocates. Isaiah's quarterly review showed remarkable results. Customer complaints about discriminatory treatment dropped to 0 across all branches. The bank's stock price had actually risen 12% following the initial incident, as investors recognized the value of proactive social responsibility. Fletcher had kept her promise. She completed 6 months of intensive bias training and logged 300 hours of community service with the Atlanta chapter of the NAACP. Her transformation was genuine. She now conducted sensitivity workshops for other corporations, sharing her story as a cautionary tale and roadmap for change. Kane became Premier First National's Director of Inclusive Security Training. His program was so effective that other banks began requesting his expertise. The man who'd nearly made the biggest mistake of his career became an industry leader in preventing discrimination. Dr. Monroe joined the Customer Advocate Board, where her medical background helped her identify subtle forms of bias others might miss. Under her guidance, the board reviewed over 200 cases and implemented policy improvements that protected vulnerable customers. Zara's live stream had launched her career as a social justice advocate. Her footage became required viewing in business ethics courses at 3 major universities. She still worked at the bank, but now also served as Premier First National's Customer Experience Ambassador. The ripple effects extended far beyond Atlanta. Inspired by Premier First National's success, 18 other major banks implemented similar programs. The American Banking Association created new industry standards based on Isaiah's Customer Dignity Protocol. Most importantly, the black stories and life stories of discrimination that had once been whispered in private were now being addressed systematically. Real-life stories of change were replacing touching stories of injustice. Isaiah reflected on that Tuesday afternoon as he prepared for another unscheduled evaluation, this time at the Miami branch. His briefcase contained the same documents, but now they represented hope rather than surprise. Every branch manager knew his name, his methods, and his expectations. The banking industry hadn't achieved perfection, but it had embraced accountability. That was progress worth measuring and celebrating. The Atlanta incident had become a case study in corporate transformation. Business schools analyzed Isaiah's approach: calm confrontation, systematic documentation, immediate reform, and sustained follow-through. Violence and anger hadn't created change. Strategic patience and institutional pressure had. Premier First National's training videos, featuring actual footage from that day, were viewed over 2 million times by employees across the financial sector. The bank had turned its moment of shame into a beacon of progress. Malik Thompson's Facebook Live video remained online as historical documentation. Comments continued arriving daily from people sharing their own encounters with discrimination and their hopes for change. The conversation Isaiah had started was still growing. But perhaps the most significant change was invisible. The countless incidents that never happened because staff recognized bias before it became discrimination. Prevention didn't make headlines, but it changed lives. The story of that Tuesday afternoon wasn't really about confrontation or punishment. It was about the power of accountability to transform institutions and individuals. It demonstrated that change was possible when good people refused to remain silent and powerful people used their influence responsibly. In a world where discrimination often felt overwhelming and systemic, Isaiah's approach offered a different model: precise, strategic, and ultimately healing. Justice didn't require destruction. It required commitment to building something better. Your voice matters in fighting discrimination everywhere it exists. Have you witnessed bias in banking, retail, or other service industries? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your stories can inspire others to speak up and create change. Help us amplify these important conversations by sharing this video with friends and family who need to see that justice is possible. Every share creates awareness, and awareness creates accountability. Subscribe to Blacktail's Stories for more inspiring accounts of quiet courage overcoming systemic bias. Ring that notification bell so you never miss stories of everyday heroes creating extraordinary change through patience, strategy, and unwavering dignity. Together, we can ensure that discrimination becomes a relic of the past, replaced by systems that honor the humanity in every person who walks through every door. Because everyone deserves to be treated with respect, dignity, and equality, especially when they're just trying to open a bank account.